Good morning, folks. What I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to start in about 7 minutes' time, which is going to also include a little disappearing trick from me while I pop to the toilet in a second. I'm just going to ask you just to confirm you're receiving sound on this, okay? So if you could just drop me a line, those of you that should be receiving this, if you could just drop me a line, just make sure you confirm for me that you're receiving the signal, please. That would be great. And yeah, and then we'll start bang on time at 9:15, if not before, if you guys are ready to go. Okay, so yeah, drop me a line and we'll go from there. Cheers. It's interesting. For a second, Martin. Give me a second. Give me a second.
What?
So I've got no maximum bit rate. Yeah, there now.
480 is what we broadcast the last time through.
Yeah, it's maximum.
Okay. What?
So it should actually be playing.
Have you started and stopped it?
Yeah, but this is it's a basic here. So theoretically we're broadcasting. Let me just send. To restart, huh? I didn't know you had to choose bitrate on the basic settings.
I don't know.
Wait, why is this asking me for an encoder? So resume hangout on air. Okay, folks. Hopefully, if you're on the receiving end of this, guys, you should be able to hear me at this point. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is just confirm with me via phone that you've got the session there, and you can see and hear me. So, if you could just drop me a line and confirm that, I'm just going to grab a drink and have a quick wee, and then we can get started on this quick demo. So, yeah, just drop me a line on my phone, just to make sure that you're receiving me fine, and then we'll get started. Cheers. Right, just bear in mind the microphone's on. Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, let me close them. Let me shut the microphone off. So guys, just to confirm, I'm not going to start this until I've got confirmation from you that you can hear me fine. So Reese, do drop me a line, and we'll make a start as soon as you inform me of that. Okay, I don't want to make a start until I've got confirmation you can hear me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the link through to you on your email once again, and then hopefully let's send this through to you. Okay. So so when you're ready, you confirm with me that you can see and hear me, and then we'll make a start, please. Hi Reese, I've just sent you a second link. Could you click on that one, please?
Hello?
Hi Reese, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I've just sent you a second link. Can you click on that one, please, and it'll take you straight there. Say that again, please.
I've just got up to the part where you're telling me to click on anything.
Okay, fine. Yeah, have you? Yeah, so you can see and hear me on the screen fine, yeah?
Sorry?
You can see and hear me on the screen fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start now.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Okay, so folks, the plan of action here really is I'm gonna do a very brief demonstration of the site for you and give you the primary functionality. The objective of this is first and foremost and most importantly so that you can understand what the just bear with me a second, so that you can understand really clearly what the student experience is first. And secondary to that, we want you to have a really clear understanding of what the teacher experienced. But I make no apologies whatsoever that the first major priority is to understand what the student experience is within the site. So please allow me to do that. The way we're going to do this organisation, we're going to be together, I think, for about half an hour. How we're going to do this organisation is once I've demonstrated certain things, I'm going to stop and pause for a little while, and basically then, if you've got questions, just call through on the phone. But what I'll do, I'll answer the questions on the phone and then demonstrate anything that's necessary. But what you need to be aware of is when you speak on the phone, there's about a 20-second delay for it going onto the YouTube screen. For anyone who's sitting there thinking, why don't we use Google Hangouts or why don't we use Skype or whatever, we're going to do it this way. That way is actually easier for us, but we're going to do it this way because often when we broadcast things into schools have all kinds of quarantining, blocking server kind of issues in allowing live streams in, but often teachers' accounts at schools allow for something like a YouTube video, which is essentially what this live stream is. So there's a way of getting this information to you without there being any real possibility of blockage. Okay, so what we'll do here is I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so let's have a look. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And hopefully now what you can see is kind of somewhat of a crazy screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on here's your registration form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my my screen here. And basically what we've got in front of us is we have a student's account here. I should have said, by the way, my colleague Marta is also in the office with me. So if Marta's our head of modern foreign languages, so if you hear someone being slightly Spanish in the background, it's definitely sorry, it's definitely her. So what have we got here? We have a student, and your students would access their their experience on the site a little bit, well, exactly like what's in front of you now. We have a student here, Darth as in Vader, and Darth is depicted here as some kind of ice skating, flower carrying champion of some kind, which I think is somewhat appropriate. And Darth's studying a kind of a range of eclectic subjects. I mean, your students are very, very, very unlikely to study this range of content we're just trying to demonstrate to you. So what do they study? They're studying the roadmap, thinking, learning, exam skills. They're studying EdXL GCE, that's the linear A-level, exercise physiology and applied movement. They're studying GCSE Spanish grammar. They're studying another PE A-level and another PE A-level, this time biomechanics, and they're doing IGCSE PE, and they're doing a legacy A-level. So obviously this is not a real student, we're just trying to demonstrate things for you. So let's have a look at this. Let's imagine, say, I don't know, let's go into, what should we go into? Let's go into physiological factors, just for argument's sake, okay? So we can click here, or we can click on go to course either, and the student's going to be taken into their content for that particular course or unit. In this case, we have a component unit that the student would be working on, specifically on physiological factors. We could have gone into biomechanics, for example. So let's see. We've got a situation here where effectively the student has not done a lot of work on this so far. So let's imagine they're going to do some work on, let's choose lesson 1, and they're going to do some work on the shoulder. Okay, so on the shoulder here, we can see here that, and I don't know how clear this is, let me make it slightly bigger for you. We can see here the student has, if you like, clicked and started on this video. In other words, they've actually watched 5% of this video already. And of course, that's going to report to you in a few moments' time. We'll look at that. But basically, the student on this A-level course on the shoulder has a 14-minute tutorial here to watch on all of the principles of the shoulder, and about 2 to 5% beyond their spec. That's very important. We stress that to you. That could potentially be key fundamental knowledge for them on these particular concepts. So look, what I'll do is I'll just play a little bit of the tutorial here. I'm not sure if the sound's going to come through. So you should be able to hear just a little bit of sound from me in the background. I won't make too much point of that. But the key thing about the teaching is it's self-paced teaching. And what I mean by self-paced teaching is that the students can take these very, very high quality video tutorials at a pace, direction, order, and rhythm that suits the individual learner. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if we think, for example, that if I look at a piece of teaching I might do in the classroom, which is on the shoulder, for example, and that piece of teaching is going to last 14 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, I'm going to stand at the front and PowerPoint or teach it from the whiteboard or whatever. Of course, that same teaching that's in this tutorial is only available really once to those students. And of course, the massive structural advantage that this teaching has, first of all, it guarantees quality teaching. I'm sure your students have brilliant teaching from you too, but it guarantees quality teaching for anybody that accesses it. And the other thing, it's repeatable and startable, draggable, stoppable at the point that suits the learner, not necessarily the teacher who's decided to teach at this particular moment. So that, of course, is a huge structural advantage. I'll just stop and talk in a second, and then I'll just show you a couple of the moments in the video. So all I'm doing here, folks, I'm just dragging through the video. Notice all these little blue bars developing underneath. These are elements of the video that the student has watched, and the white parts of the elements of the video that the student hasn't watched. Okay, yeah, so these elements that they really need to cover. There might be a reason for that. Maybe they've studied it in biology. Maybe they already know it. Maybe they're trying to search their way to the key bit that they're trying to find. But of course, what we can also say is there's big chunks of this video that haven't been watched. I want to be really clear here. When the student gets this number to 80%, when the student gets this number to 80, let me just stop the video. When the student gets this number to 80%, they're going to be presented with a question. And the question is going to say to them, have you fully understood this content? So what we're saying there is they basically watched the video 80% or more. And then the student has a choice. Are they going to report to their teacher, I'm confident with this material? They hit yes. That's going to make, as we'll see in a moment, that's going to make your tracking mastered. Or are they going to say to their teacher, I'm struggling. Okay, I need some extra resources, some guidance on this material. I don't get the bit about the femoral head or whatever. And if that's the case, of course, they can hit no, I haven't fully understood. And that's an indicator for you guys to think, right, that's where I need to put my time and resources. So that happens. And the student's going to watch this whole thing, and I'll show you in a few moments' time how that reports to you, okay? Next point is your student can ask you a question, okay? So in this case, this student can ask James a question, and their question can be, James, I'm stuck on the shoulder, especially the bit. Did I say femoral head earlier? Obviously the head of the humerus is what I should have said. This is stuff that can happen live, especially the bit about the humerus. Okay, please help. So they can send that. They can send that message to their teacher, and that will go off to James, who will receive that message. And I'll show you where that's received in a few moments' time. Okay. Now that message won't appear here yet until James, the teacher, has confirmed that that is an acceptable message, because of course we don't want kids being able to post any old stuff there, and the teacher has to approve the message that comes in here. Okay. Now the other kind of headline here, of course, is the students have a quiz on this content. So I'll just show you that quickly. Very important point. The student has to, at the moment, the way the site is right now, the students have to score 6 correct answers to pass this quiz. Now, if we give a student a worksheet, for example, and we say to them, that worksheet has to be perfect in 10 minutes and you get in one go at it, it's not fair. Because some errors are likely, errors are useful, and errors can lead to a richer learning experience. And if we have a fixed seat time to how we access a worksheet, say, let's say these same questions were on a worksheet, then that's not reasonable to say you have to get 6 in a row. But when we say to a student, you've got to get 6 perfect answers in a row, but you can repeat this as many times as you need to. You can take a whole range of questions that are different each time. You can start it now, have 2 or 3 goes, and even if you don't master it, you can come back at it tomorrow. Then it's fair, because what we're saying is that we're varying seat time, but we're fixing the achievement rate at mastery. Now, when I talk about mastery, I can only talk about mastery in the skills that we're presenting in this website. We're not suggesting that watching the tutorial and mastering the quiz is mastering exactly how to write a flowing prose-based answer on this topic. No, they have to develop that skill as well, and that's what the classroom's for. But within these core rote learning concepts, this is going to help them a lot. So they start the quiz, and look, I'm not going to read the question, but just so you can get the idea, they're going to do things like drag and drop. Please don't judge my answers, I'm not even reading it. So you get the idea. They're learning about the shoulder here, and then they hit the answer. And what the answer does here is it reorganizes, it shows them which ones are wrong. I'll show you some of the feedback in a second. Which feature of the shoulder increases its stability? Well, we're going to have things like strong ligaments, strong muscles surrounding the joint, the depth of the joint cavity. Now, those answers, I think, are the correct answers. But I want to be clear here. Let's say they don't check that one, which I think is going to be correct. They've got 2 out of the 3, and if I hit check, this answer is still not correct, because we expect it to be perfect for that 6th in a row. All right, and you see here, you get the feedback on this type of question on what the joint should be like. Okay, so the student keeps going. What is the scientific name for the shoulder joint? It's called the glenohumeral joint. Okay, the ball and socket joint is called the glenohumeral joint there. And anyway, we keep going. We got another question here. I check, and it's I happen to accidentally get one right there. And then here, what type of joint best describes the shoulder? That's a ball and socket. Anyway, we get to the end of the quiz. I'm not going to answer that one. We get to the end of the quiz, and the student's got some answers. There's got some options. So we finish the quiz here. There's a little bit of processing, and the student's got some options. They can restart the quiz, and they're being advised to do that because they only got 2 of the 6 questions right. So they're going to do that. Importantly, I'll come to this one. They can view their questions here. They can look at the leaderboard, and they can have a look. The top entry is always the most recent entry, okay? And what we like to see in this model, you see it here with Hayden E. Norman here. You know, they have a go at it first time and they don't nail it, so they have a go at it the second time. Emily's a very similar example here, okay? Having a go at it and then nailing it down. Sam here, look, Sam's an interesting one, 50%, 50%. He's keeping going, bless him. It could be a him or her. Now on 83%, and presumably Sam's going to put another answer in here, another score in here before he or she nails that down. Okay, so we're looking for the students to get up to that 100% level. I'll go back to the view questions part. Here, of course, I can go down all of the answers I've put in, right or wrong, and I can look at what that content is. Of course, what am I going to do? Very likely, I'm going to probably go back and have another go at this. And we repeat that until we master it. Now, in terms of the questions, there's banks of questions behind each quiz. But of course, ours is a content course. It's not like maths where you can just continually put in slightly different numbers and produce a different question. No, there are limitations, but we try and have range of questions behind all quizzes so that there's a different experience each time. Okay, so what I'm going to do there, folks, I'm going to pause in my presentation. I'm going to encourage you to give me a call, and you can ask me any questions that you have. Okay, so yeah, fire away. So I'm going to expect a call through, even if it's for you guys to say we're happy, please move on. So do yeah, do give me a call, please. I'm going to turn my microphone off on the screen. Not desperate if not. Okay, so folks, yeah, so.
Oh, I see. As a get, I don't need to be logged in as you.
No, it's just if somebody, yeah, if these guys pass a chat question on there, just pass it on to me. Okay, so the key thing from here really is to show you how teachers interact with the service. Okay, so we'll do that now. Before we do that though, can I express to you maybe some of the options you have of using something like that with your learners that I just showed you. I guess the obvious thing that you can do is you can use that like as a homework strategy, right? You could say to your students, right, today we studied topic 7. This evening or before I see you next, go home and study topic 7 with James on myPEexam and make sure you master the quiz. And as you'll see in a moment, you'll be able to track that. I guess that would be a standard way of using this kind of service. I guess the next step, and I think in reality this is probably what the majority of schools that work with us do, is you just flip that on its head. So rather than the students reviewing work, the students are preparing the work which is to come in the next lesson. Consider that flip learning if you want, but it would be a way, I guess, of taking the rote learning elements and having those being dealt with before the students enter the classroom. And of course the tracking will enable you to know what they've done. And from that perspective, you can then make the classroom about doing. Okay, so you can make it about problem sets, questions and answers, about practical, about experimenting, about project work, about group work, about games, whatever. You can make the lesson that kind of active space. And lots of people do that. But what I want to stress to you is that at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to set your students something like a task to do the tutorial in the video on topic 11. Okay, so topic 11 is whatever it is, vascular shunt or something, and you're going to set the students that, and they're going to come back in next lesson, and you'll have seen in the tracking already that 3 students have done topic 11, but they didn't stop. They went on and did 12, 13, and 14. Now, what do we do in that scenario? And I ask you in advance to consider very, very seriously about how your educational model and paradigm allows for that possibility. Do we then just repeat the experience that we were going to have anyway, even though these students have learned the fundamentals from James? Or do we do something else? Now, we have our models for that, and they're published and they're online and they're free. You can you can look at those, and I've no doubt they'll provoke you. We're kind of a long way down the line of how to manage that. We have an entirely self-paced learning model that we apply, so students can move at various different points in the course. But obviously you need to decide yourselves on the model that it's relevant for you, and of course it will be a progression. The other thing you're going to find that I think is important before we look at this tracking stuff is what happens when the group is all moving on nicely, but you've got one student who for some reason, because they've missed something, or they haven't got something, or they haven't mastered something, or they're not feeling particularly confident, or they've been bruised as this learner through constant kind of failure in their educational cycle. What do we do with this learner who's not up with these learners here? Do we allow for this learner to stick at this point and to remediate on those key principles before moving up onto that next material? Now, again, I can't tell you what's right and wrong in your classroom. Very happily talk about how we do it, but it's a question I would suggest that you start to ask yourself as you start using this facility. You probably won't answer it at the start, but a year in, 2 years in, you're probably going to be finding that you're going to be using these mechanisms for remediating on what we call mastery deficits, things that are stuck. Okay.
Yeah, that's just one question.
Oh yeah, fire a question, yeah.
It says, do the questions from the pupils get sent to your emails, to your email as a notification?
Okay, at the moment, the question was that Martha's whispered over to me is, do the questions come as a notification? No, I'll show you in a moment. They pop up in a particular area of the site. However, we completely relaunched this service, the entire thing, in 2017 as the everlearner.com, and at that point, that's exactly what's going to happen. In fact, you can set all of your own notification settings to anything you want. So, for example, one of the options you're going to have is a weekly report, or you can just have every single notification. If you use any kind of notifying service, it works in exactly the same way. So, at this second note, imminently and during your work with us, yes. Okay, let me move it on. I'm going to share my screen with you. Again, do feel free to ask those questions in the chat space while Martha's going to pick them up for me and pass them up. Is that right? Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen again. If you can't, let me know, okay? Because I need to be confident that you can. So this time I'm just going to use my Safari window here. So let me just make this slightly bigger. So here we have a teacher. So this is James. So this is effectively a little version of me. Now this is the boring bit in many ways. This is the admin bit. So this is behind the My Admin button. And I'm looking at what the My Admin for what we call the lead teacher or the super admin at the school. Reese, I believe this is you. Non-lead teachers on the site, you have a slightly more limited version of this. Feel free to have a look. So the way this works is you have a dashboard, you have your kind of renewal period, terms and conditions, and we post things here of information which is relevant for you guys, so please keep an eye on that. Secondly, you have, well, I'm going to go to the end actually, you have your students tab over here. Now look, I've got these students here, my school's called the Star Wars School. I've got An Ewok, C-3PO, Chewbacca, and so on and so on. I've got 2 Darth Vaders, something to look out for in case you have created a student twice. But of course what we've seen is we've seen Darth Vader studying earlier today. But of course what we've got here is that if I want to, well, first of all, I can delete An Ewok over here, and it's going to ask me to confirm, so I'm going to say no to that. So if we ever have a student that leaves us, say. But the other thing is I can edit anything about that student. So let's say the student has changed their first name and last name to something silly. We can change it. We can change their email. We can also reset their password. You just type over this. Set the new password, save changes. And that password is now saved. So if a student ever says to you, look, I forgot my password doesn't work, never accept that excuse, by the way. Treat my password doesn't work like I haven't got a pen. The login works 100%. I'd like to say 101%, but it's not possible. The password, the login works 100% of the time that the student enters their details correctly. Secondly, if we want to create a new student, I don't know how to write this, but I'm going to create Jar Jar Binks. I don't know how his name was spelled. And let's just put Jar Jar at jarjar.com. So obviously this is not a real student. Now what's going to happen is in a moment, when I hit create this student's going to receive their notification and their login credentials via email. So I'm going to create the students, but importantly, have a look here. I also get the first name, last name, email, username, and the password of the student and I can download it as a CSV file here and take that with me. Okay, so you can have those details, but realize that soon as the students have got access to their account, they should and they can change their own password. So this is, if you like, relevant for the first time you use it. All right. If you've got hundreds of students you want to enroll, just send them to us and we'll upload them all for you to save you some work. You just have to allocate them to groups quickly. In groups, I think I'm working today in the ex-phys. These are all experimental groups. You see, I've got here ex-phys group. If I now want to add a course to this group, let's say I want that course there, it's as hard as doing that. So that course is now enrolled for those students, and for the teacher. So you see that here. So that's now been enrolled for James, and it's now been enrolled for these students. Okay. Now, if I want to enroll my new student, who do I have? Jar Jar Binks here. I literally just click add, and Jar Jar is now enrolled in this class for all of those courses and is visible to James as the teacher. Okay. So it's as easy as that. All right. So next stage. My courses, very, very simple. First things first, what was Darth studying early? Physiological factors, wasn't it? Let's say we're working on physiological factors. Firstly, and perhaps most importantly, you as the teacher can study on this course. Now, there is no shame in this. Look, if we haven't taught the A-level PE, the shoulder before, it's useful to go in there and look at how James teaches that. Or how I teach that, I should say in the third person. That's useful. If I haven't taught something for a year or never, it's not possible because I've taught it on here, but if I haven't taught something for a year, I also go back to my videos and study it from my videos. That's normal. And you can also start your quiz and you can look at the quiz questions. So basically you can have exactly the same experience as the students, but we want to go to my courses. So let's go back to physiological factors. I can look at my messages here. Okay, I've got pending messages, and you see here, I've got 2 messages from Darth Vader. So here, from Darth, I've got James. I've stuck on the shoulder, especially the bit about humorous, please help. Okay, so I can go here. First of all, I'm going to prove the question, which means it's going to list underneath that question for Darth. He's not written anything daft. It's a relevant question for everybody. This one probably wouldn't be, but now he's asked me something technical about the shoulder, so I'm gonna post that to all of my group, and I'm giving him a positive rating. In other words, I'm saying it's a good question, and then I'm going to say the answer is, and whatever, the answer is whatever. Right, so submit that question, and that goes back to Darth in that way. Okay, so that's how you're going to answer your questions on there. But let us go back to my courses, go down to my group where we physiological here. The key thing I really want to do is I want to have a look at stats. Okay, so we go into the stats page. Now, I've got Darth Vader here, and Darth Vader is my student. Now, what we're looking for here is we've got 4 settings within this. Let me make it slightly bigger. We've got 4 settings within this progress report, okay? We have not started, so we see here, Chewbacca has not started the lesson on the shoulder. He has not started the quiz on the shoulder. In fact, he ain't done nothing, okay? If anyone was struggling, I'll come back to this concept in a second, these blocks would go orange. If they've started them but not done everything they should, they're in progress, and if they've mastered them, they go dark blue. All right, so Darth is our live student. So if we have a look, Darth's got a lot of in-progress material. Okay, now I can have a look. Now, I haven't got a lot of data in here, to be fair, but what I want you to imagine is that you've got tons of data about a whole class of students in here, and this is all grey, orange, light blue, dark blue. The idea of it is you know where to put your resources, you know who to work with. Now, in the case of Darth, who we watched study earlier on, Darth has started the tutorial but not hit 80%, either having understood or not, and he started the quiz but has not mastered it. Okay. The other thing is I can click on Darth, and down here it's going to tell me what he's done in the last 7 days. So in terms of video, Darth has done 4 minutes 40 of the shoulder video, and he's in progress. He has not mastered it. And in terms of quizzes, again, the shoulder here, he's done 4 minutes 13 in that quiz, but again, he's in progress. He hasn't mastered it. So it suggests to us that he needs to go back to that and complete that work. We would consider that, say, incomplete homework. Now, the other thing we've got is this effort report. And you see here, again, Darth has been our only active student, but we've got 2 lines here. It defaults automatically to the last 7 days. You can make it longer ago if you want to, okay? You just filter it that way. So if you want more than the last 7 days, just go to there. You see here with Darth Vader, I can see that during his school hours, He has studied 22 minutes and 13 seconds in the last 121 days. So that's his total time spent studying in school hours, 8:30 till 4:30 weekdays. Out of school, he's only done 9 minutes of work over the last period. Of course, that gives us an indicator of the regularity of use. And again, you can look at the, and now it's given us, of course, more than just a week. It's now given us the details of what he's done in those 121 days and how much time he's spent on things. Okay, so we can see where that time has come from in terms of both the videos and the quizzes, what we've got here. So what we'd like to think about this reporting to you guys as the teachers is that, of course, it's going to allow you to know, did they do it or not? And that's a relevant question. But perhaps more importantly, enriches the conversation that you're having with the students, okay? And that's really, really important. It enriches the conversation you guys have with the students that you're working with. So if you do have time to be in one-to-ones, small group teaching where you're interacting with students on a regular basis, this type of data and information gives you an awful lot to be discussing with them, okay? So final point on this, during the time you're working with us, you're going to see dramatic changes in this teacher reporting. Okay, so we are relaunching the entire module for this with a lot more information. I won't say too much about that because I don't want to sort of over-promise on timing and under-deliver, but just accept from me that in the time that you're working with us, you're going to have dramatically more information for you to be working with. So I'm gonna pause there. Let me stop sharing my screen. As I sip my coffee, I'm going to wait for questions to come in. So Marta, have you any questions on the chat space, my dear?
Yes, we've got, can we see the 7-day data for a whole class at a time?
Yes, that's what I just showed you. That's exactly what I just showed. So it defaults to that. So for the effort report, and when you click on individual students, it defaults to the last 7 days. So that's exactly how it works.
That's it. There's nothing else.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to wait for you guys just to either post questions into the chat or feel free to give me a call. Yeah, so fire away. So you're saying please continue. Well, guys, I don't have anything else I want to show you. I can talk to you briefly about usages of the site, but yeah, I mean that might want to be a longer conversation. So the fundamentals of the site you have there. I think one of the things you guys have to do, Reese, is you need to get your group set up in the site. I haven't looked to see whether you've done that yet, so I'd recommend that you do that. If you're unsure, obviously speak to us about it, and we'll address that for you. But the first thing is to get your students registered and get your students using it and to set them some tasks on the site. That's the next step for you guys. One of the, I mean, obviously you guys have got to decide in your own model how you want to use it. One of the things I would say to you, and I think is a very important point, is that everyone using it in the same way is both extremely unlikely, and secondly, is also actually not that facilitating. You might want to have standards of how you use it and quantities of use and regularity of use and these kind of things. But I don't think you want to get a situation where every single person is doing it in the same way, okay? Because teachers are going to apply this given their own strengths and weaknesses and experiences in different ways, and I think you want to encourage that. However, what you do want to make sure is that the quantity and quality of the use is appropriate across the different groups. So the thing I would say for the lead teacher is, of course, what you want to be doing is you want to have oversight and be a teacher added to each and every one of those groups. So you can see the data coming in for the entire cohorts across, say, year 10 or year 11 or whatever. And you want to be able to see that because that's going to enable you to look at the quantity of use. The other thing that you should do is start to notice the correlations between students who use the service regularly and groups that use the service regularly, and things, if you use them, such as end of unit test scores, such as later in the year mock exam scores, such as past paper scores in lessons. What begins to happen to those that are using it regularly? And we will be imminently publishing some data on that. I want to repeat again that what you've just seen this morning is the minimum of what you're going to be using during your contract with us. I cannot emphasize enough how our relaunch of this service later in the year, which of course you guys will automatically have access to, is massive growth and development on the range of services that you get. It's not just practical, pragmatic stuff such as notifications. I mean, it is literally built around an educational model, and I'm looking forward to you guys seeing that. I won't say too much about it now. So hopefully you guys can hear me. So the other thing I'm going to quickly show you, if you do want to, if you want to make immediate impacts, just bear with me while I get the right screen in place. Okay, if you want to make immediate impacts on how your students write in any prose-based structure, not just extended writing. Please don't see extended writing as some different behaviour to compare it to, for example, writing beautiful prose-based answers for a 3-marker, a 4-marker, or whatever. Yes, there are additional requirements to that skill, but the fundamentals are understanding how to write in a fluent and competent way. So let me give you an example of that, of how we provide it. What's the best thing I can show you? Just bear with me a second, okay, guys? And I don't know if you saw earlier, you've got the roadmap. You had the roadmap course in the site, which is also going to be available to your students to study. Okay, let me just share my screen with you. Bear with me 1 second. So hopefully you can now see my screen with a bit of luck. Okay, so this is just a slide. So I'm only going to show you one of these. I'll show you the whole range of this. This is what we call the roadmap. Let's say your students are asked to explain something. Let's say they're, or it could be, I'll show you evaluate in a second, or discuss or analyze, it just happens to be explained. We use a metaphor-based structure for their answers, and I cannot emphasize to you how effective this is at answering any prose-based question. It's absolutely superb. So the way this works is, if a student is asked to explain, let's do this one, explain why something happens. Okay, so explain, I don't know, explain why heart rate increases at the start of exercise. I can't think of a better example. They're being asked specifically within that question to provide reasons for that process taking place. So we provide this, rather than saying to them PEE or PEA or IDEA or PETA or any of these acronym mnemonic-based methodologies, which are welcome to use, but ask yourself, does your student know how to explain something if you've got that E in there somewhere? So the way we structure this is that we encourage the student to think that they're going on a writing journey, and their journey is in this little vehicle. So what they're going to do is they're going to go up this road, which is one of their ideas, and they're going to cross this skills barrier. And at this skills barrier, they're going to show they're explaining something by using this content, this indicative language here. So explain why heart rate increases at the start of exercise. So I might say, it increases, I get to this bridge, it's called because bridge, it increases because, they take the language from down here, there is an increased demand for oxygen at the working muscle, or whatever, full stop. Okay, we go to this bit and we say, and then we might say, this means, so we cross this bridge here, this means the heart has to increase its stroke volume and its contractile frequency, heart rate. This means it has to increase its stroke volume and contractile frequency to deliver more cardiac output to the working muscle. And the key point is that to deliver more cardiac output to the working muscle is the mark. What was the one I said here? Increased demand for oxygen at the muscle is the mark. And they're picking up this little character here, whose name is Mark. Okay, so they're picking up Mark on their journey by crossing this skills barrier. I don't know if I've got any other examples on this little, let me just close this second. I wasn't really prepared to talk about this. Let's have a look at this one. This one's called, this is the compare skill, okay? So compare in this way, I don't know, if we compare, let's just choose Reese and James, because Reese and I think of, we can talk about each other. Okay, so here we've got to make a comparison. This time, to get my mark, I must make sure I make a comparative statement between James and Reese. So this idea on this left side is James, this idea on this right side is Reese. Okay, so I could say, James is a PE teacher, full stop. Similarly, comma, and that's how your students are going to write it, because that's how it works. Similarly, comma, Reese is also a PE teacher. In other words, we collect Mark in our bus, or we collect Mark in our answer, because we have specifically made a comparative statement. Okay. The second one, we might say here, I don't know how tall Reese is, but let's assume he's 6'8". We might say here, James is 5'10", and I might say, comma, space, whereas, and that's how they're going to write it. You could use however, comma, whatever at the start of a new sentence, comma, space, whereas Reese is 6'8", full stop. Clearly, we are making comparative statements within that structure. Now, if you want to, you're very welcome to see extended writing as some different skill to being a brilliant writer in general. Feel free to see it that way if that's how you see it. But I guarantee you that this methodology is extremely functional for students to clearly understand what it means to compare, to explain, to evaluate, so on and so on and so on and so on. I'm trying to think if I've got an evaluation one I can quickly show you. It's also a nice one. I haven't got it on the screen, so please forgive me for that. Probably share with me. gonna leave that there. So so that would be the way we suggest you to do it. Now, we're not suggesting in that scenario that you don't still say to your students, right, EdExcel request that you do this thing, AQA request in your 9 markers, you do so and so. Of course, do that. It's teaching. They don't have to learn this concept in a vacuum. They still need you to advise them and guide them. But in terms of the fundamental skill of how to think, how to learn, and how to write, there is nothing better right now that can provide that development and growth for your students than that resource. It's absolutely magnificent. And I don't think you can see, it's actually on the, let me take these down. What we would recommend you give to your students is, for example, one of our little pocket guides here. I mean, we've got the posters here as well, which you're very welcome to look at. These little pocket guides are super, super cool. So Brown skills are what we call B-road skills, things like identify, define, suggest, state, summarize. They're, if you like, sort of 1 to 4 markers generally. We've got the green skills here, which are what we call A-road skills. They'll generally be 2 to 5 markers, 2 to 6 markers sometimes. And then, of course, you've got the highway skills, the blue skills, which are things like evaluate, discuss, analyze. And it clearly shows the student how to perform those skills. Now, I repeat it again, we're not suggesting that they learn this in a vacuum. You still need to say to them, in our exam board in OCR, you have to follow this rhythm or whatever. But they deserve in their educational cycle to learn what it means to evaluate, to learn what it means to explain, to learn what it means to analyze. And that will do it so well for you that you will make expert, you took my eye, you will make expert writers of your students if you use it effectively. Ask any questions you have, guys. And we are going to stop soon because I have work to do as well. So we're going to stop imminently, okay? How do we get the roadmap cards? Well, first of all, the online course, guys, you've already got access to that via your subscription. So there's a 14-part online course for your students, a certificated course. I mean, why not make it the first experience they have on your GCSE, on your A-level? It's about 2.5 hours worth of study. I don't know, induction week, say. They're going to study that whole thing and certificate on it. It's just a suggestion. You don't have to do that, of course. If you want to get hold of these, then you need to discuss it with us, and we have various packages that you can purchase. But you have the online course already. We cannot give you those as part of the package because they cost us, obviously, that beautiful thing, which is fantastic quality. We can't give them away as part of an electronic subscription. So we encourage you to do that. We have what are called clash packs. Martin, do me a favour. Just grab me the evaluate. Give me evaluate and explain or something like that. Please. Just yeah, right. So we recommend to you that you use, these are what we call the A4 classroom posters. You have a set of 14. In fact, see if I can turn my computer around. There's one on the wall behind Martha, even though she's not sitting there right now. I don't know if you can drop a computer here, I think. You might be able to just see that on the wall over there. It's not put on the wall particularly well, but you get the idea. That's over there. Marty, you're on camera. I don't know if you want to say hello.
Hello.
The professionalism of it. So this one's an interesting one again. Let me show you. So this time the student's going on the journey on the evaluate. And of course, if they go here, I don't know, evaluate, what can I think of as an evaluation? What did I say before? Oh, evaluate type 2 levers, I think I said. Okay, so they're going to go here. The positive, the strength is type 2 levers operate with mechanical advantage, okay? Which means, so we could go on and we say, which means that they can overcome large loads with relatively little effort. But they've got to keep going here. Now they're negative. On the other hand, they cannot operate with mechanical advantage, which is what gives a joint flexibility and speed of movement. And then, of course, as we make another evaluative point, another one, and then we reach a conclusion. And these are not set structures. Your students must design them. Because, of course, if this was a 6 marker, this would work really nicely. But it's a 9 marker, they might need a bigger loop. If, for example, evaluate the impact of hosting the Olympic Games on the individual and on individuals, on performers and society, I might have one big loop, which is society, one big loop, which is performers, and look at lots of advantages and disadvantages on each of those loops. So for students, it's not prescriptive, it's a frame that they can use in different ways. Right, guys, we're going to have to stop because we've got a huge amount of work we've got to do today. So while I don't want to cut you guys off, I have to get some other stuff done today, so I'm going to have to get moving. But if you have another question, feel free to ask away, and then we're going to have to call it a day, I'm afraid. While I'm waiting for that question, explain it. So the explain post would be a little bit like that. So look, it's up to you guys, isn't it? Whether you want to use those. I mean, you've already got the online course, but having a structure in your classrooms, these should be literally in the pockets of your students or in their pencil cases. I'm sure all of the boys in your classes have all got beautiful pencil cases with many different colour pens in them.